Welcome to a prevention and educational presentation on what parents and teens need to know about teen dating violence, presented by Love Doesn't Hurt, Inc. My name is Anna Astwood. I'm one of the co-founders of Love Doesn't Hurt. My background is I've spent 11 years as a high school counselor, and I have a bachelor's degree in psychology from UCF. And then I went back and got my master's in counselor education, also from UCF. Charisma O'Keefe is my co-founder. She has worked with students with varying exceptionalities, consulting and program development for nonprofits, such as Keep Her Safe, Big Brother, Big Sister, and the Central Florida YMCA. So this is the agenda for this presentation, kind of outlines for you what we're going to be talking about. We're going to go over what our nonprofit does, what our mission is, the different types of abuse, statistics about teen dating violence, the cycle of abuse, how to develop healthy relationships and boundaries, warning signs for parents and teens, where you can go for help inside of schools, outside the school environment, safety planning tips, and then we're going to close with our trauma healing, empowerment, and self-love. So Love Doesn't Hurt, Inc. is a 501c3 nonprofit that is dedicated to ending teenage dating violence and supporting those affected through education, empowerment, and community support. So we've been working with organizations in the Central Florida community where we provide educational presentations and resources about teenage dating violence. We've worked in middle schools and high schools, churches, community centers, where we talk about different things like healthy relationships and how to build appropriate boundaries, the cycle of abuse, safety planning, and the different types of dating abuse. So we wanted to start out with the different types of dating abuse. The first one, and I think probably the one that people most think of first is when you think of dating abuse is physical abuse. So physical abuse is any intentional use of physical touch to cause fear, injury, which could be from kicking, pushing, shoving, any type of physical force to injure their partner. Um, Something that I always try to take note on too is sometimes, physical abuse does not have to be a hit or a kick or a push or a shove. It can be grabbing someone by the arm and squeezing them really tight. It can be restricting them from leaving the room by holding them down. Things like that are also physical abuse. Second one is sexual abuse. So it's forcing or attempting to force without willing, active, and unimpaired consent to a partner to take part in a sex act, sexual touching. And these things are happening to our kids. And so although uncomfortable to talk about, it's really important that we talk about what would be appropriate and what is not appropriate. Third one is psychological aggression, and that encompasses verbal abuse and emotional abuse. It's the use of the verbal and the nonverbal communication with the intent to harm another person mentally or emotionally, and also to show they have control over the other person. So these behaviors could be threats, insults, yelling, constant monitoring, or isolation from friends and family, things of that nature. Stalking is a pattern of repeated unwanted attention. So being watched, followed, monitored, harassed. This type of contact by a partner causes fear for one's own safety and also the safety of people who are close to them. And then digital abuse is using that technology that all of our teens have access to now, where they use the technology to bully and stalk, threaten, or intimidate a partner using texts or social media apps and and even tracking their own the phone of their partner and where they're at all times. So now that we've gone over what the different types are, this these statistics show how prevalent it is in our society. So the first one talks about how 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will experience severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. So this statistic kind of goes not just the teen years, but it kind of covers the entire lifetime. But if you look at that, 25% of women will experience severe physical violence is a very large number of people. So that is a big concern that you think that many people are having severe physical violence brought to them. 1 in 3 adolescent girls in the United States is a victim of physical, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner. And that figure far exceeds victimization rates for other types of violence that affect youth. So this stat talks about specifically adolescents. So 1 in 3 adolescents, girls, are victims of either physical, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner. It's 33% of adolescent girls. That's a big number. Globally, as much as 35% of women have experienced intimate partner violence or non partner sexual violence in their lifetime. And so this stat really helps to kind of understand that this is not a problem just here in Florida, here in the United States. It's all over the world. This is happening to everybody. There's not one group of people that this does not touch. And then, according to Florida Health Survey in 2019, almost 9% of high school students experienced dating violence, and then 9% also reported experiencing sexual dating violence. So to put this in, terms that kind of help us understand how many kids this would be, if you had a high school that had 2,000 kids, that would be 180 of them have experienced dating violence or sexual dating violence. And I think it's important to note that those are the numbers that are reported. There are so many more that aren't. So can you imagine in your child's high school almost 200 kids having to deal with some form of abuse from a dating partner? And then according to futureswithoutviolence.org, they found that 25% of 8th and ninth grade students have been victims of non-sexual violence, and 8% have been victims of sexual violence. And so we're talking about 8th graders, ninth graders, which is probably around 13, 14 years old. So it's starting very young. And that's really difficult for someone of that age, and really for any age, to deal with something like that. And that's a big number, 25%. So it's really important to kind of just be aware that this type of thing can happen really early into our young students. So this is our teen dating violence cycle of abuse. The cycle of abuse is something that's been around for a long time, and we kind of revamped it a little bit. We wanted it to be appropriate for teens. And this is just a snapshot of our cycle of abuse. When we do these presentations, we typically go into lots more detail and more slides on it, but this will give you an overview of the cycle of abuse that we have created. So um, there's 4 different areas that kind of move through in the cycle of abuse, and you start out in the calm. You start out with, the relationship going really well. Um, Everyone's kind to each other. There's respect and oh, I'm treated so good. This is why I like or love this person, or everything's so great. And every relationship will differ in the amount of time that a couple may end up in this particular phase. So for some it could be 6 months where everything's great, it could be a month, it could be 2 months. It's going to be different for every single couple, but things are good, right? And then they move into a tension building phase where the perpetrator is gonna start testing boundaries and they're gonna start seeing what they can get away with. They're gonna find what's important to their victim and ways to manipulate them. And you may hear a teen saying, "Oh, my partner is just really overprotective because they love me so much. I can't wear that outfit because it upsets my boyfriend or girlfriend. I don't want to hang out with other people because they don't like it." Things like that start creeping up. And again, that time period could be very short in the tension building phase or could be long, months, and a lot of grooming that happens during those time periods. And so at some point it shifts and the abuse occurs. If that's a physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, some type of abuse happens. And it's extremely difficult for our students to comprehend what's happening because for many, this could be the first time they're in a relationship and there are a lot of big feelings. And so when you've been told by someone, I really like you or I love you, and then all of a sudden they have some type of abusive behavior, it's really confusing for them. And so typically quickly, you move into the honeymoon phase because that perpetrator will say, "Oh, I'm so sorry I did that. I didn't mean to do that. That's not like me. I was just having a bad day." Sometimes you'll hear them say, "Well, you did this, and that's why it caused me to have that response," and put the blame back on the victim. And the honeymoon phase is really important in a cycle of abuse because victims tend to, oh, okay, say, "I love this person and they love me too. They're apologizing, so everything's fine. I'm going to give them a second chance." And then they move right back into that calm where everything is great for a while. And then that cycle just continues. Very challenging to see the cycle when you are in it. So our hope is that if we can educate students about this so that they know that this is a cycle of abuse, maybe they can pick up it on their own or pick up on it when they're friends in a relationship. But this cycle of abuse is so important to know that this is how it works and this is how they kind of keep you in the relationship for months or years and years. So this is our cycle of abuse. Again, we go into much more detail when we have presentations just for this, but gives you a good overview of what we've developed. We do teach about healthy relationships. I think that we tend to assume that teens know what qualities are part of a healthy relationship. And I don't think that they know. I don't think that we've taught them. So we go over this. So there's 4 pillars that we've pulled out that we think are the main areas of a healthy relationship. First being trust and honesty. So you really have to have that core trust of your partner's feelings, their emotions, their dreams, hopes, desires, being able to forgive each other without accepting mistreatment. And there should be a star next to that because that is so important and at the same time so difficult to distinguish sometimes because yes, we forgive people for mistakes, but what's the difference between a mistake and mistreatment? And that's what we're trying to teach our students. And that's really important because you don't want to continue to enable the bad behavior. So that one's really, really important. Also, count on your partner to do what they say they're going to do, right? That's that's the foundations of trust and honesty. And in communications, we talk a lot about how to use I statements, how to express how you feel without being critical of the other person. We have a lot of activities that go over that, how to actually utilize that properly. You want to have direct and respectful, but assertive communication. So it's actually really, teaching how to communicate, having that assertive way of talking with it not being aggressive. And you want to feel heard and validated by your partner. And how do you do that? And that's what we help teach, is how to validate someone's feelings and how to know when your feelings are validated. Respect, value feelings, opinions, beliefs, even when they're different than your own. Really important, because we're not the same and we are going to have differing opinions. And it's how do we deal with that appropriately? And expressing kindness and gratitude, thoughtfulness, and being patient, and being considerate of how you use your words, your actions, and your behaviors, and how they affect your partner. Um, Things to just keep in mind, that how you talk to your partner, how you treat them, is really very detrimental, right? We really want to kind of establish a kind, safe environment in a relationship. And then lastly, safety and boundaries. So in a healthy relationship, you want to see the appreciation of the partner's personal boundaries and their, respect their own privacy. Um, you need to have physical, emotional, mental safety in a healthy relationship. And then, of course, you want a relationship without any intimidation or manipulation and psychological aggression. So those are the four pillars that we teach, that we go over with the students. And each one of those pillars has different activities that we teach them and kind of go over so they actually put things into practice. So here are some warning signs for parents, for teens, for themselves, and for their friends if they notice certain things happening. Um, so the first one is maybe you see a decline in grades, or they start skipping school. Something's off, something's changing with that. That's something to just kind of take note of. They may start spending less time with friends. And that one's a little difficult because when you're in a relationship, it is very common to spend more time with their boyfriend or girlfriend and less time with their friends. But if you're seeing that it's really they're never spending time with their friends anymore, only with their partner, again, that would probably to me be like a warning sign to say, hey, something that seems a little off. You need to have more of a balance in your life. They may lose interest in sports, clubs, or their job. They may start making excuses for their partner's behavior, like, oh, they did that, they had a really bad day, that's why they did this, and just start making up excuses for what's going on. They may have injuries that they can't explain, where certain marks come from, bruises. Um, Sometimes you can pick up on if a student is feeling nervous or anxious around their partner. You kind of get that gut feeling that something seems off. Um, or they may worry about upsetting their partner, not wanting to get them upset, making sure that they do everything right so they don't um, get their partner upset. So that's really important to take note. And one that I think most people may not be aware of is that they may present new medical concerns. Um, your student may be able to keep their grades up, they hang out with their friends still, they're still working, they're doing sports, all those things are the same, but all of a sudden they start having chest pain, or they're not sleeping, or they're grinding their teeth at night, or they have stomach issues. Those are red flags. Those are red flags. Those are ones that you might not even think about. But when someone's dealing with this trauma and abuse, it manifests physically. So those are just some warning signs, for parents and teens. Just kind of be on the lookout. And sometimes students don't have hardly any of these, and they keep it to themselves, and it can be really tricky to identify what's going on. But these are just ones that at least okay, I'll look for this, and just kind of as you move through this, keep in the back of your mind. So a lot of students and adults, to be quite honest, do keep quiet about their experience of being in an abusive relationship. And so you may ask yourself, like, why would anybody not ask for help? Why would anybody allow someone else to do this to them? And it's not that they're allowing it to happen, is that they don't know how to handle this. right? Could be their first experience in a relationship. These are really difficult situations. And so we listed a couple reasons why someone may not want to seek help. The first is sometimes people just don't know what they're experiencing is actually abuse. That's not even computing in their head that this is abusive. So that's number one, which is very, very common. They may feel, which I'm sure not even may, they probably feel shame, okay, and or responsibility for their abuse. So there is an immense amount of shame when someone experiences when they are in an abusive relationship. And that alone, the embarrassment of having to come forward, thinking that you're a bad person, that you've done something wrong, is so gut wrenching that it's just too difficult for them to tell anybody. Um, the third one is they may be scared of their partner's reaction. And I think that's a very legitimate reason in certain cases, that their partner may get very angry and potentially violent if they haven't already. So there is fear that goes in with having to tell. Um, and that may stop them, of course, from saying anything. And then lastly, they just may not know where to go for help. Who do I go to? Do I go to my parents? Are they going to understand? Do I go to my friends? Do I go to my school counselor? There's just, I think, a lack of understanding of where can I go? Where is it safe to go and get help? Now, this certainly isn't an exhaustive list of why people don't seek help, but just gives you a you know a deeper look into why someone may not say anything. It's really complicated, and we have to be very empathetic towards our students and understand that they're just trying to figure this out the best way that they can. So, where to go for help? So, parents, I implore you to talk to your teen. I implore you to just have these conversations, no matter how uncomfortable the conversation is for you to have with your student. It will never be as uncomfortable as it is for your student and your child to experience abuse. And so if we can have these conversations before anything happens, there's that safety, there's that feeling of my parents understand and they're not going to judge me if they ever have to come and ask for help. So do it with gentle empathy, right? These are really hard conversations, but ones that are really important. So different contacts that you can have in the school if you think that your child is involved in an abusive relationship. The school counselor, okay, their teachers, administrators. Every school now has mental health counselors in the school that work inside the school every day. There are school social workers and school resource officers. Okay, outside of school, we highly suggest a mental health counselor. You can call the non-emergency line and make a report of suspected abuse. If your child is in immediate physical danger, you can call 911. You can go as far as filing a protection order through the courts. And then, of course, just enlisting trusted friends and family to help you process what's going on, to help kind of build a network of safety and support for you and your family. The different actions that can be taken is if you contact teachers, they can keep an eye on the student. Just report any unusual behavior if they start leaving to go to the restroom for long periods of time, they seem upset, withdrawn in class. That is invaluable information. So I suggest, having these conversations with the teachers so that they're with them 7.5 hours a day. And so they can let you know if something seems to be off. School counselors can have frequent check-ins with students. Um, I used to call kids in, every couple of weeks, every week, just depend on the situation, just to check in, just so they knew where I was, who I was, and that if they needed me, they knew where to go. And they knew that someone was checking up on them at school. You can have no contact contracts developed by administration where the two parties can't have any type of contact at all. That one's very difficult because typically the victim does not want to do this. And to have this work, they have to be on board. And that's really a very challenging one to get done. Um, and there are also, like I said earlier, mental health counselors or school social workers that can meet with the student. They run groups, they do individual therapy. So really reach out and utilize those resources. So just a quick tips on safety planning with your team. We recommend that you make a safety plan with your team before any abuse happens, and having these conversations so that they know what to do. So just different quick tips about developing a safety plan. Writing down what's the safest way for them to get to school and home from school. And it doesn't just have to be, safety in terms of dating abuse, just safety in general. What's the best safe way for you to get to school and for you to get home? Or how do you get to work and how do you get home? Um, are there places on campus that you don't feel safe? Maybe it's a hallway that there just aren't a lot of administrators in, right? They can't be everywhere at all times. So, how can you maybe avoid those particular areas that make you feel uncomfortable? And then, what areas do you feel comfortable with on campus? And maybe that's where you go, you spend your time. Developing a code word to alert friends or family that the teen may be in danger. Could be a quick text, code word that they send, or a phrase that they'll text, and you'll know, okay, they need me to come pick them up. They need me to call them, and that's a really great way of communication. Always carrying their cell phone, which probably isn't an issue because I'm sure they carry their cell phone with them all the time. But having it handy, especially if they're out and they're driving on their own, they're going to work, walking to their car in a parking garage, things like that. Having it out, just in general safety guidelines would say that that would be a good idea. Letting a friend or family member know where you are at all times. That way, if you're late coming back and your parents can then figure out where you've been, where you've been, and that way they make sure that you're doing okay. So staying out of isolated places, calling 911 if your safety is at immediate risk, and setting your online profiles as private. It's important to really look into that cybersecurity guidelines and make sure that you keep your profiles private so other people can't make comments and things like that you would not want. And then we always end with our trauma healing and empowerment and self-love. And these things are important for everybody, but especially for those who have experienced teen dating violence. So, trauma healing, we recommend seeking counseling for your teen. Like I mentioned earlier, there are mental health counselors in schools, there are mental health counselors outside of school, there are free mental health counselors available at UCF. There's counselors that do a sliding scale to help with lower costs. So there are a lot of opportunities out there, and finding the right one is really important. But I highly recommend seeking counseling for your team. Movement, so easy, gentle, exercise helps the body to relax, helps the mind to heal and relax. So things like yoga, going for a really nice walk, and maybe walking with your child, right? Going out for a walk with them. And sometimes that just allows a nice conversation to open up. Meditation is wonderful. YouTube has a lot of really good guided meditations, and because some people it's really hard to just do it, a mantra for 20 minutes. So you can go online and find guided meditations that kind of talk you through the meditation, and it could be 10 minutes, could be 20 minutes. There's a lot of variability there, and it has a great way of calming the body and calming the mind. So we really highly recommend that. Empowerment is so important to us. We want to empower everybody, not just those affected by teen dating violence, but everybody. So, how do you talk to yourself? Do you have positive things to say about yourself? Because what you say to yourself is how you feel about yourself. And so really kind of shifting the mindset of not being so negative, being positive about yourself, and setting realistic goals. So, every week or every month, deciding what's your goal, and but setting them so that you know you can probably obtain that goal and you feel better about yourself knowing that you were able to do it. And surround yourself with positive people. Surround yourself with people who are fun and make you laugh and make you feel safe. Those are the people that you want to be around. And lastly, self-love, and taking the time to practice that self-compassion and acceptance of yourself. Right? We all make mistakes, we all have issues, and really taking the time to get to know yourself and appreciate what you've been through, and give yourself that space to heal. And that goes along with positive affirmations to yourself. So you can pick an affirmation and say it in the morning and at night. And you'll see over time that you start to believe it. So what you tell yourself is really important. Spending time on hobbies that make you feel good. What kind of things make you feel good? Do you like to go to the gym? Do you like to paint? Do you like to play music? Do you like to play sports? What do you like to do? What makes you feel good? And that's what you should be doing with your spare time. Some enjoy journaling, where it's just a safe place for you to write down how you're feeling, what your hopes are, process through different emotions. And it's something that you can keep to yourself. You don't have to share it with anybody else. It's really a wonderful way to kind of get out those feelings. And of course, listening to music that speaks to you. Music is something that moves a lot of people, and you can identify with the song, and it touches you, and you're able to go to a place that is very calming. So, those are our suggestions for trauma healing, empowerment, and self love. These are resources, these are our national resources for dating violence. So, the first one is the National Dating Abuse Helpline. Loveisrespect.org is a great website to go. There's so much information there. And they do have a helpline. So if you're in a situation where you feel like you need help immediately, I would call that number. There's also the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and then the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, also known as RAIN. And all these websites have great information to look at. I want to thank you so much for listening to our presentation. We are thrilled to be able to do this, and we hope that we can work with many, many schools and students and just empower and educate our youth so that they don't experience abuse. And if they find themselves in that situation, they know maybe what they could do and who to go for help. So this is our contact information. Our website is www.lovedoesn'thurtinc.org, and same for Facebook and Instagram. And then we have our email, which is lovedoesn'thurtinc@gmail.com. Thank you so much for your time. We greatly appreciate it.